Welcome, whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are at this moment, and wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome to this place of memory and hope where we share our joys and our struggles in our quest for what is good and true. Welcome to this online video worship service for August 15th, 2021. I'm Patrick Webb, Worship Associate. Our minister, the Reverend John Cullinan, is on sabbatical, and I'm delighted to introduce our guest speaker, Allison Farnum. Reverend Allison Farnum is the minister and director of the Unitarian Universalist Prison Ministry in Illinois, a statewide ministry that focuses on equipping UUs to support people harmed by the prison industrial complex. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all lives. We come together to learn from each other, and we draw inspiration from many sources to work together to build communities of greater justice and compassion. I'd like to extend a special welcome to anyone who is joining us for the first time. Please sign our virtual guest book. If you would like to learn more about our church, you can contact the church office for more information. Whether you have been visiting us for years or here for the first time, may this time we set apart from our everyday concerns help us see what is most important to us in ourselves, in each other, and in the world around us. We hold this chalice to symbolize the oneness of our faith. We light this flame to symbolize the warmth of love. May we remember this flame as it symbolizes and reminds us of the warmth of love and community we all share.
I'd like to invite you into a call and response reading that comes from my colleague, the Reverend John Courante, and he brings us the good news of Unitarian Universalism this morning. And so when I put my hands out like this, you can stay muted and our voices will join in spirit and you will say, "Hey, ain't that the good news?" Okay? So let's try it. Ready? Hey, ain't that the good news? We believe there's a place at God's table for each and every child on earth. Hey, ain't that the good news? We believe the giver of life has given many names and loves the givers of all of them. Hey, ain't that the good news? We're more interested in getting heaven into people than people into heaven. Hey, ain't that the good news? We believe that religious scriptures are open doors instead of sealed vaults. Hey, ain't that the good news? We believe that there is some holy writ still yet to be written. Hey, ain't that the good news? We believe that evangelism is more preaching practiced than practiced preaching. Hey, ain't that the good news? We believe peace and justice are not just words we form with our lips, but realities we shape with our lives. Hey, ain't that the good news? We believe that we are one with the stars and the trees and the tigers and the rivers and all of the stuff of life. Hey, ain't that the good news? We believe our lives are about growing hearts that love, minds that seek, and hands that serve. Hey, ain't that the good news? And let the people say, Amen, Ashe, Salam, Shalom, blessed be.
We speak our affirmation each week to remind us of why we come together and of the promises we make to each other and to the wider world. In that awareness, I invite you to join in our affirmation.
Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each and with all.
For all our joys, for all our sorrows, whether we share them with one another or we hold them close to our hearts, let us be with one another in spirit and in a moment of silence. Our lives hold tears of sorrow and loss, as well as songs of joy and hope. This moment we take to remember them can bring us through the day.
Be with us as we open our hearts to goodness and mercy, to journeying with ourselves and with others in that long road to being compassionate, knowing we will not always get it right. Remind us, O Spirit of grace and forbearance, that we need not be perfect, and celebrate with us those small movements towards progress, not perfection. Enter into those hard places in our hearts and minds and soften the words, soften the edges, whether they're feelings or old memories. Just be with us. And our sorrows, our resentments, the places that aren't ready to forgive. remind us of what is possible. And may our faith be strengthened as we move towards a world filled with more compassion, more goodness, more kindness, more hope, love, and joy. And let us especially remember in this time all of those who are detained and imprisoned, near and far. And let our love for liberation grow and move in us in ways both small and large, depending on our own capacity. And so let us send out our love and hope and joy and kindness and goodness and mercy to all those who need it this morning. Peace, shalom, and blessed be. Amen. I'd like to share an excerpt from a book by the white Buddhist Jack Kornfield. It's called No Time Like the Present, Finding Freedom, Love, and Joy Right Where You Are. On a train from Washington to Philadelphia, I was seated next to Robert Brown, an African American who had worked for the State Department in India and had quit to run a rehabilitation program for juveniles in the District of Columbia. Most of the youth he worked with were gang members who had committed homicide. One 14-year-old boy in the program who'd been living on the street before the killing had shot and killed an innocent teenage boy to prove himself to his gang. At his trial, the victim's mother sat impassive, silent until the end, when the youth was convicted of the murder. After the verdict was announced, she stood up slowly and stared directly at the boy and said, "I am going to kill you." The young man was taken away to serve several years in the juvenile facility, and after the first year, the mother of the slain child went to visit his killer. He'd had no other visitors to the facility. For a time, they talked, and when she left, she would leave him with cigarettes, or some money for cigarettes, and eventually she started to visit him more regularly, bringing food and small gifts. And near the end of his 3-year sentence, she asked him what he'd be doing when he got out. He was uncertain, so she offered to set him up with a job at a friend's company. She inquired where he would live since he had no family to return to, and she offered him temporary use of her spare room in her home. For 8 months, he lived there, ate her food, and worked at the job. Then, one evening, she called him into the living room to talk. She sat across from him and waited. And then she started. "Do you remember in the courtyard? Do you remember in the courtroom when I said I was going to kill you?" I sure do, he replied. I did not want a boy who would kill my son for no reason to remain alive on this earth. I wanted him to die. And that's why I started to visit you and bring you things. That's why I got you a job and let you live here in my house. And that's how I set about changing you. And that old boy, he's gone. Now I want to ask you, since my son is gone and that killer is gone, if you'll stay here. I've got room and I'd like to adopt you, if you'll let me. And so she became the mother of her son's killer, the mother he never had.
You guide me, always lead me. I shall not want for anything. Still waters, green pastures, I rest so much in beauty. Even though death lies before me and darkness is all I see, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. You're always with me. You refresh me and restore me. I shall not want for anything. In the presence of my enemies, you set a table and feed me. Even though death lies before me and darkness is all I see, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. You're always with me. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all of my days. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all of my days. You fill me, you anoint me, I dwell in your presence. You comfort me, you adore me, my cup it overflows. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all of my days. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all of my days. I will fear no evil, for you are with me, always with me.
What a story. That kind of tale just bolsters my faith in humanity. Not just in humanity, but in the spirit of humanity. That spirit of love that connects us all and calls us together, even in the most challenging of ways. What was it like? I myself, I'm a mother of 2 small children. I can't imagine losing either of them, particularly a violent, murderous death. Yet something called to that mother of the slain son, that mother showing up to visit the boy who killed her boy. Oh, my faith in the spirit of love that connects us all is bolstered. As we see in that story that she shows up to meet with this boy, to give him money to make his time inside better, and then offers him a place to live and to stay, and becomes his mother. I believe in that spirit that calls us together. I don't know, even now, years as a Unitarian Universalist, since I was 2 years old, been an ordained minister since 2008, and I still don't have words, but I have sweeping feelings of connection, possibility, and what we as humans can still do when we participate with the spirit of love. And when we humble ourselves to what it requires of us. What did it require in that mother? What shifts, what transformation of the heart? I think of Psalm 23, and I interpret my own words. God, the divine, is my shepherd, and I'm not lacking in anything, as I'm invited to lie down in green pastures and am led by still waters. My soul is restored, and I'm led in the paths of righteousness. Righteousness in the name of love. And though I travel through the valley of shadow and death, I'm not scared of the worst of evils. Because you, O Spirit of love, you're with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And you prepare a table for me, before me, in the presence of my enemies. And you anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of love forever. What I love about the psalm is that the psalms were songs that were sung over and over and over again. Songs to be sung into being. Songs that were ways that we wanted to be in the world, that we want to be in the world. Because every day in my life, I surely do not feel like goodness and mercy is following me. Or that in the presence of those thoughts that can be my enemies, it's hard for me to set a table of generosity and to cooperate with the spirit of love in that. There are so many ways that I am called to live into this psalm. But also remembering that there are others too who have and sing this same song. And I think of my friends and people I know who are in prison, thinking of the presence of love accompanying them, and how lucky I am to hear reflections from them about that presence of love. They use different words for what that might be, whether it's God or Jesus or the Spirit of life. but that presence of love is with them. And sometimes it's through the singing, it's through the sharing, it's through the praying and meditating that presence of love comes to us. That goodness and mercy can flow through us in all our days. But in prisons, that kind of goodness and mercy is not by design. It is by the sheer participation of those inside who are doing their best in the midst of human rights abuses that the United Nations shudders at. When we hear stories about people who have changed and transformed, it wasn't because of prison. It was in despite of prison. And so when I hear the story of this mother who's ready to receive this child, I think of all the opportunities that were lost upon so many others in how to care for this child before he ever ended up in a juvenile detention center. All the lost opportunities for connection and relationship that led him to form connections with a gang. The desperation of need that we humans have for relationship. It's real. We're born into the world needing care, needing concern. It's okay to be hugged and loved. It is what we need. We're born into relationship. And so how is it that there's this dominant and controlling narrative, this underlying assumption about what safety is, that the only thing keeping us from danger must be bars. The only thing between us and danger are cages and police. Well, that's just not true. I suppose there's a way of looking at the world that danger could be lurking around any corner, because there are plenty of violent activities that happen that never see any attention. And the systems of harm. That there are systems and ways of being that perpetuate violence in our world. And so I feel, as a person of faith and as a Unitarian Universalist, it's my job to sing the songs that tell us that we're more than just a society that thinks that locking away people is okay. The poet and writer and activist and organizer and body worker Adrienne Marie Brown talks about, when she's talking about transformative justice, she begins often by asking people about when they were children. And to think about a time when you did wrong. Were you sent to timeout? Were you punished? Were you given an opportunity to calm yourself within the presence of someone who was loving? And then able to talk it through later and develop strategies for how to be in right relationship? Were you hit? So often we hear stories and we know deeply the beginnings of retribution as children. And that's behavior that's okay, even though it often solves nothing to be separated, to be isolated from the very sources of love and steadiness that we care for. And of course, the situations in families are always nuanced and layered and complex. But overall, in our culture, there is an edge that says, if you hurt, you will be hurt too. But that hurting of locking someone away in cages, instead of finding a deeper sense of accountability through truth-telling, through singing our songs, through processes of reconciliation, if we don't engage in those processes, then the violence is still going to continue. The behaviors, the opportunities for transformation are lost. We, as people of faith, as Unitarian Universalists, as people of conscience, who try to engage in this ethical living, we can understand that there are teachings from our theology that help us. And there are also some teachings from our theology that don't always help us. I was always moved by William Ellery Channing, the late white Unitarian theologian, about his ideas around salvation by character. The idea that we can engage in our own self-perfection. And he had a very deep and interesting devotional life, so much that there was an intensity to it. He had a sort of bootstrap philosophy that was highly individualistic, which very much speaks to the time he was in, where that Western Enlightenment, hyper-individualistic philosophy was truly coming into shape. What he leaves out about this idea of salvation by character is that we can't really do it by ourselves. And that even if one is doing it with their higher power or God or spirit of life, that oftentimes that presence, with a capital P, is found in relationships, in our communities. And that those teaching moments that bring us and invite us to transformation are in community, are in relationship, not just inside one individual. So often, when we look at the idea of salvation, in more traditional terms, salvation is something that's about the hereafter. It's not even about caring about now. But as we engaged in the call and response, it's that invitation that we're about bringing the good news to this life, to here and now, not about some sense of freedom or release from suffering in the hereafter. No, it's about understanding that we can bring love and hope and peace and joy to this life right now through engaging with that presence of the spirit of love that calls us forward and that is known and shown to us in community. So if all of this transformation, this hope, this love, this peace, this joy can be found in community, nobody ever said it would be easy. Because there are plenty of times when I only just get glimmers of it. And a lot of the other time when I'm in community and being in relationship, well, that's complicated and it's hard. It's not easy. But in some ways, the culture, at least that I've been living in, it's as if I've relegated my imagination for what's possible to prisons, to police, and to punitive systems, instead of bringing it back into an understanding of transformation in community. And that if I'm not in those communities, I can support and learn more about how I can take the lead from communities who are engaging in that kind of work that some people know as transformative justice. The criminal legal system, as it is right now, is a punitive system. And it has not served us in terms of being able to look at the roots of violence and harm in our culture, and to truly acknowledge how deeply enmeshed the beginnings of this nation with white supremacy are wrapped up into that violence. And until we can become to really get a loving look at that, And not only to be curious about it, but then to be called forward by the Spirit of love to take action in support of communities who are forming new spaces of love and healing from harm and repair. Now, we can't really get anywhere with the punitive system. Instead, our Unitarian Universalist theology, in looking at salvation by character, or even the Universalist teaching that redemption is possible for everyone, and that if we are going to be saved in this life, it's something that we do even in our own character in community, we can help shift a dominant theology that says if you do something, you will be punished and go to hell. We bring something different. We bring good news. And part of that good news to me is presenting a world without police and prisons. It's about engaging and singing the songs that tell us that not only will goodness and mercy flow through my life all of my days, but everyone else deserves that as well. That there are other people too who sing those songs of freedom and celebration and prayer and hope. So we have opportunities to engage in relationships that support building a presence of healing and love and support, whether it's for people who have experienced harm or is it for people who have done harm and who can be called to a sense of accountability in this life, not about the next life. It's not enough to think that some person who's done a bad thing is going to roast in hell. And it's not enough for me to think that a person who's done a bad thing is going to be locked away in a prison. That doesn't work for me personally because it doesn't address the larger issues of harm that are continually perpetuated in the culture we live in. And it is a culture that devalues Blackness and devalues people who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color, whether you're Asian Pacific Islander or if you're Latinx, and also devalues people who move and act in the world differently, whether they're passing through some experience of disability or have an ongoing arc of a disability journey in their lives. It devalues people who are queer, trans. And so, hey, we have good news. Surely goodness and mercy can follow all of us in all of our days. But you know where it starts? It starts in that really messy place of relationships. And I can bet that in congregational life, some of you have experienced some of that. That we who have made promises to each other in covenants, whether in little small groups or as a whole congregation, there have been moments when the rubber has hit the road, as I like to say, where we really get to lean into that covenant and call one another in to that circle of love and give folks an opportunity to sing the songs of hope and of goodness and mercy and find ways to be in relationship with one another even when it's hard. So, I do have to tell you that there are about 15 people right now who are waiting for Unitarian Universalists to write to them, they are in prisons in Illinois. And when I tell you that relationship is the beginning to this transformation, being a pen pal is one of those ways of getting an idea of what's going on for people who live inside Illinois prisons, and also being an outside connection to someone, and being able to relay information as your inside pen pal might share with you about conditions that are going on in the prison, about things that need to be changed, and engaging with us at the Unitarian Universalist Prison Ministry of Illinois and telling us what kind of advocacy that pen pal might want us to do. You see, building the world we dream about, it sounds pie in the sky, but it's something that has to be done little by little. Even though it's a huge, long, epic, sweeping journey, it doesn't mean that we can't try, move by move, to make it possible. And one small move that can really become very large in your life is by being a pen pal. So as we move and invite ourselves to be called forward by the Spirit of love, I invite you to get a pen pal, and I also invite you to have a critical eye to how the criminal legal system and policing and prisons are portrayed in our media. This summer, I want you to pay attention to the framework that is used, the dehumanizing language that is used that allows us to be separate from one another, and have a critical and open heart to what is possible when we move from a theology and from systems that are punitive and retributive, and allow ourselves instead to become part of circles of repair and healing. And as one set of authors and activists, Mariam Kaba and Shira Hassan, say, they call it fumbling towards repair. Ways to bring healing from harm into our communities and to be more present to one another. And to sing the songs, like in the Psalms, of hope and love and peace and justice. So let us keep singing those songs together in relationship. Blessed be.
Thank you, Reverend Farnum, for your thoughtful words. Next week, our guest speaker is Joel Miller, minister of the First Unitarian Church of Rochester, New York. Please remember that if you plan to watch this service Sunday morning at 10:30 at the church, you must reserve a seat. And please, you must wear a mask while inside the building. The number of individuals are allowed in the building is currently set at 50. As we continue to gather as a community in the church building to watch our recorded services, 4 volunteers are needed each week. For an explanation of duties, click on the Volunteer at Services tab on the church website. To sign up to attend or volunteer to help, please use the church webpage or contact the church office. If you are joining us for the first time, we again invite you to sign our virtual guest book. And everyone is reminded that you can submit personal joys and sorrows in our virtual prayer book. The Reverend John Cullinan will be on sabbatical until November 1st. During this time, we invite you to direct your questions and comments to the church office. The links for doing all of these things are in the service notes below this video. Please continue to check our website and our Facebook page for announcements. If you haven't already done so, sign up for our email announcements for opportunities to connect each Sunday and throughout the week. Our offering is an opportunity to share some of what we have with the wider world. Our community partner for the month of August is the Los Alamos Family Council. The mission of Los Alamos Family Council is to promote emotional and social well-being through education, prevention, and counseling. 100% of the proceeds collected this month will be given to our partner. Please use the link in the service notes or download the GiveLify app and select the Unitarian Church as your gift recipient. May the offertory music lift your spirits, and may what you give bring you joy.
Go forth from this place, ready to be called forth by the Spirit of love into circles of community and connection, and ready for challenges that can transform you and bring healing and love to your communities. May it be so. Amen.